I decided that Will's next wife will be this girl.
I had no idea what she meant.
Excuse me? What do you mean?
Ex-wife.
I'm saying I don't need you anymore. Your time is up.
My name is Elsa, and I am a 35-year-old office worker. I have a husband named Will. I met my husband at work, and he was 6 years younger than me, so I thought I was naturally excluded from his romantic interest.
I love you, Bullseye. I don't care about age or anything like that. I love women who are older than me.
And he appealed to me aggressively every day. Will's passionate feelings for me won me over, and I decided to go out with him. From then on, we continued our relationship going strong, and we got married. However, there were many events that watered down our marriage. We immediately went to his parents' house so I could meet them. At that time, my mother-in-law opposed our marriage on the grounds that I was older than my husband.
You're 33 years old. You should already be married and have a child who's a kindergartner or elementary schooler by now, so why the delay? Is there something wrong with you?
What are you talking about? Mom, it's your first time meeting her, and you're being rude.
What? But this is important. You are the eldest son, so you have to choose your partner carefully.
My mother-in-law started to talk about being in my 30s, being single for a long time, and other things that I was concerned about. Then my father-in-law said, "Hey, Will is the one who chose her, so we have no right to tell him what to do." He scolded my mother-in-law. "Elsa, I'm sorry. My wife was rude." My father-in-law spoke up and apologized, and my mother-in-law became quiet. Thus, my husband and I were successfully given permission to marry, and we finally did. However, although my mother-in-law allowed us to marry, she did not approve of me. My husband's parents were a somewhat wealthy family and had strong roots in the local community, and my mother-in-law was very proud of that. My husband grew up in such a family and was pampered. Even so, there was nothing selfish about him, and in fact, I even thought he was cute in his calm and naive nature. However, there were many problems during our engagement. My mother-in-law suddenly called me over and introduced me to the women in the community, appealing to them as her family's wife. Since they have deep roots in the local community, my mother-in-law is the representative of the local women's association and seems to be a leader in the community. I did as I was told and greeted the local people. They all greeted me kindly and said in a whisper, "Good luck." Apparently, the people in the women's group have a hard time connecting with my mother-in-law too. I was a little relieved to know that I had allies on my side. My mother-in-law told me, "Find out if you can get pregnant," and forced me to get a fertility test before marriage. I was a little peeved at my mother-in-law, but certainly at my age, it could be a risky childbirth. To be honest, I was wondering if my body could conceive, so I decided to get a fertility test. When I went to the gynecologist for a checkup, the doctor assured me that I would be fine. I thought I could get married with peace of mind now, so I gave my mother-in-law an enthusiastic report. But my mother-in-law said, "Oh, I see." She replied with a cold, deadpan expression on her face. "You were the one who told me to check it out." I thought this and was about to get angry, but I held back. Perhaps she was expecting that I wouldn't be able to give birth. Did she think that once she found out I could have a child, she would not be able to oppose the marriage? As I was feeling uneasy like that, the day before the wedding, I received a message from my mother-in-law.
Come to our house for a dinner party.
Will and I were called to their house. I didn't think that it was normal to do this right before a wedding, but my parents told me to go, so I did. That only laughed. I went with Will to his parents' house. We had dinner with my in-laws there, and when we had finished eating dessert after dinner, my mother-in-law said to us, "So about moving in together." She began to say, my eyes went wide. In my head, I was thinking, what are you talking nonsense? We're supposed to start our new life with just the two of us. When I heard that she wanted to move in with us, I began to panic.
We don't mind if it's right after the wedding.
Apparently, in my mother-in-law's mind, she is set on moving in with me and Will. No, this has to be a joke. I would never let anything get in the way of our newlywed life. I hurriedly interrupted my mother-in-law. "Wait a minute. Annette, what are you talking about, living together? It's still a long way off, isn't it? We're not comfortable with you talking about it right before we get married." When I said that, my mother-in-law looked at me with a mean face. She looked at me as if I was the one saying something funny. "Oh well, you haven't told her yet?" I half panicked and looked at him quickly. He didn't change his expression and said, "Oh, I think I forgot." He began to say, What do you mean?" "Well, my mom and I have been talking about it for a while. We're gonna live together in this house when we get married. But this is the first time I'm hearing this." Such an important decision should have been made earlier, and you should have talked to me about it. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. Please accept it, I'll say. But, in hindsight, I wish I had refrained from getting married at that point in the evening. But this was 2 years ago when I had just turned 33. I would have no future if I abandoned this. It might be difficult to find a new relationship and get married in the future. Perhaps I was quite impatient, but I had made the wrong life choice. Perhaps my head was in the clouds because I was finally able to get married after he proposed to me. Contrary to my mind, I had to move in with my parents-in-law upon marriage. As I expected, married life was much worse than I had imagined. First of all, we were not living in a two-family home. We were 4 adults living together in a single-family house. There was really no privacy. There was none of the sweet honeymoon life I had imagined in my mind, and my mother-in-law was always picking on me about everything.
Elsa, you have a really plain face. Well, is so cute and pretty with a strong nose and eyes. But what if your baby looks ugly? That wouldn't be good. You're also a terrible cook and housekeeper. You've got nothing to offer. I've never seen that before. So what a pity. She always says these rude remarks to me.
She even told me to find out if could have children, even while we were engaged, so she is pressing me to have kids. I feel like my mentality is being drained every time she talks to me.
How old are you now? Do you ever know how old you are? Usually, at your age, you must have had a child. I don't want a wife in my house who can't have children. You better have a boy.
I was surprised that there are people who say such things in this day and age. But I thought, well, my in-laws are an old family, and old-fashioned traditions are still alive and well. And then she complained about me working.
Why don't you quit your job?
She asked me demandingly. I love my job, and it's my life's purpose. Now that I have moved in with my in-laws, I have special permission to drive to work, so I can't cause them any trouble by quitting. I never want to stop working, so I didn't care what my mother-in-law said to me. My mother-in-law, who was angry because things were not going her way, demanded that I give her $1,500 a month if I would not quit my job. In other words, she wanted me to put in money for living expenses. My mother-in-law, of course, was lenient with my husband, so she didn't demand any rent or living expenses. But I guess she was angry because I was not getting her way, so she demanded money from me personally. Since I had been allowed to live in the house for free, I decided to put in $1,500 a month to my parents-in-law's house, thinking that was good enough for me. You have an office job, you won't be able to have leisure time if you give so much of your money to me. My mother-in-law said that with a mean smile on her face. But to begin with, I'm not the type to spend much money. I use things until I can't really use them anymore, so my life is pretty simple. I'm sure my mother-in-law is under the mistaken impression that I have no money and live a poor life. For me, it wasn't particularly hard to give her $1,500. If anything, my mother-in-law's different harassment each time was more painful. 2 years passed before I realized that I was living like this. As expected, at the age of 35, not only my mother-in-law, but even my husband began to ask me, why haven't we had a baby yet? He began to blame me. I was taken aback because I did not expect my husband to say such a thing. Next, around this time, my husband also joined my mother-in-law in picking on me. We were supposed to love each other, but in 2 years my husband had come to say the same thing as my mother-in-law. It seems that little by little, my mother-in-law brainwashed him. If it was only my mother-in-law, I might still have been able to bear it. I thought I had a good marriage with my husband, so my husband's betrayal was quite painful. Then, my husband and mother-in-law took an even more unbelievable and surprising action. One day, something happened when I came home from work after a long day of work. When I went to the living room, I saw a picture of my parents-in-law, my husband, and a strange woman chatting with them. The message on the screen had the name of a Michelin-star restaurant and the word owner next to my name.
How can you be the owner of a fancy restaurant? You're just an office worker, aren't you?
Oh, you saw the broadcast the other day? I'm gaining experience in office work for when I have another business venture in the future. As for the restaurant, I inherited it from my great-grandfather's family, and I have been the owner in place of my father for about 5 years now. I graduated from a night culinary school after college, and I had a chef's license. I worked as a chef at my father's restaurant on nights and weekends while working as an office worker. I'm currently preparing for another business venture, so the restaurant is mostly left to the manager, but a news channel wanted to interview the owner, so I just appeared on the show.
My ex-mother-in-law and ex-husband were surprised to hear my story. Well, I don't blame them. When I mentioned that my father ran a restaurant when I met Will's parents, my mother-in-law thought it was just a small restaurant.
Oh, I see. Wait, that's just great. I didn't realize you were making so much money. That's good.
Hi. I'm calling off the divorce. Come back home now.
My ex-mother-in-law and ex-husband were saying crazy things to me.
What is wrong with you?
Apparently, the newlywed young woman was not working, not doing any housework, and just lounged around at home. She called that harsh mother-in-law a grandma and says, "Grandma, you're being annoying." She has an attitude. She also calls my ex-husband old geezer and says that he has to pay cash for her to have children.
You don't pay me. I do it. I won't do it.
She said that she would call the police if she was forced to have kids, and that her ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law were at their wits' end. When I asked for more details, I was told that the woman had been unemployed ever since she graduated from high school, and her parents couldn't do anything about it. So the Women's Association heard this strange family was looking for a new wife to get rid of their daughter-in-law, and introduced her to them in order to push their troublesome niece out of their lives. I laughed when I heard that story. My ex-mother-in-law, in fact, was a representative in name, only in the Women's Association. Not a leader at all, and she seemed to have been made fun of behind her back. She was the only one who didn't know about it. My ex-mother-in-law realized that people around her were looking at her menacingly, and she was so embarrassed. So she wants me to come back as soon as possible and pretend that everything up until now was a misunderstanding and nothing happened. She also wants me to explain to the Women's Association and ask them to restore her reputation to those around her. Also, as for my ex-husband, he says that he is always short of money because his parasitic current wife is spending his salary more and more as she pleases. Moreover, his wife doesn't get up in the morning, doesn't do her chores, and of course doesn't make lunch for Will, so he has to get by without lunch every day. My father-in-law, who had no presence, had disappeared from the family. He abandoned them both and went away. That's something my ex-Failurmo would do, and I found it funny.
We're in a lot of trouble. Please come back.
My ex-husband begged me. I smiled and finally said to him, "You deserved everything you got, didn't you? You guys kicked me out, then brought her here, so you're on your own now. If you keep making a fuss about this, I'll call the police." Tak mi kast out. After I kicked them out, my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law nodded off and left my parents' house. I don't know what happened to them after that, but a friend of mine from the Women's Association, who became good friends with my ex-husband when he was married and still keeps in touch with him, told me that their family finances are so tight that my ex-mother-in-law also has to work part-time. And as usual, the new wife is still a money-grubbing, unemployed person who does nothing. They having a hard time getting rid of her, so apparently both my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law are completely exhausted. I was pleased to hear this. I'm enjoying a pleasant life being single, after experiencing a comfortable single life. I don't think I'll be able to think about marriage for a while, but I'd like to fall in love again, so I'll try to focus on my work for now while casually dating on the side.